First Contact Revelation. The massive starship of the Galactic Authority emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull shimmering with energy fields as it decelerated. Grand Observer Xorix stood on the command deck, all four of his arms folded in ceremonial posture as Earth came into view on the main display. Another primitive world ready for assessment. Xorix remarked to his assistant, third analyst Mila. Records show they've only recently achieved basic orbital capabilities. Standard protocol applies. We'll document their development, catalog their biological diversity, and determine their candidacy for eventual inclusion in the Galactic Registry. Mila nodded, her violet skin shifting patterns in acknowledgement. The preliminary scans indicate they've achieved rudimentary spaceflight within the last century. This should be straightforward. But the mission's routine nature evaporated when the long-range sensors began reporting anomalies. A junior officer's tentacles twisted in confusion as they studied the readings. Grand Observer, the officer called out, "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the system. There appear to be substantial installations in the asteroid belt, and the readings from Mars indicate. I'm not sure what I'm seeing." Xorix frowned. "Impossible. Their historical records show they've barely established a presence beyond their atmosphere." "Incoming transmission," announced the communications specialist. Well, you should see this yourself." A holographic window materialized before Xorix. Instead of the expected primitive radio signals, they found themselves looking at a crystal-clear quantum-entangled transmission. A human woman with copper-colored skin and silver-streaked hair regarded them with a calm smile. "Greetings, Authority vessel," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I'm Director Imani Okafor of the Solar System Administrative Council. Welcome to Earth space. We've been anticipating your arrival." Xorix's outer membrane rippled in shock. "You speak standard, and you have quantum communication capabilities." "Oh, we deciphered your language from your automated survey probes last year," Director Okafor replied casually. "Fascinating encryption protocols. By the way, rather elegant approach to cryptography." "That's impossible," Mila whispered. "Those probes use 37th generation security algorithms. Would you prefer to dock at our Ceres station?" Okafor continued. "The approach through the asteroid belt can be navigationally challenging without proper gravitational harmonization technology." As if on cue, the Authority vessel's sensors suddenly registered multiple massive structures appearing throughout the system. Orbital rings circling Mars, enormous habitation domes on the Moon's surface, and vessels of astonishing designs moving effortlessly between them. "How?" Xorix managed to ask. "Your species only achieved powered flight a century ago. Our records indicate." "Ah, those records," Okafor chuckled. "We had a rather unique developmental trajectory. You see, while most species focus on building larger engines and faster ships, we decided to focus on understanding the fundamental nature of reality first. It's remarkable what you can accomplish when you crack quantum manipulation before you try to build a conventional rocket." "That's backward," Mila exclaimed. "You can't develop quantum technology without space exploration first. It's not possible." "That's where humanity's greatest strength lies," Okafor said with a knowing smile. "We don't particularly care what's supposedly impossible. Would you like to see our quantum computation center? It's actually a single electron expressing itself across multiple timeline variants. Makes your crystalline processors look a bit outdated, I'm afraid." Xorix's diplomatic training was the only thing keeping him composed. Everything he knew about technological development, about the proper order of scientific advancement that every other known species had followed, was being casually dismissed by these humans, who seemed to have ignored the standard path entirely. "Director Okafor," Xorix said carefully, "I believe we need to seriously revise our assessment protocols. Would you be willing to share your knowledge with us?" Okafor's smile widened. "Of course, that's what we've been hoping for. You see, we've been observing the Authority for some time, and we think there's much we could learn from each other. For instance, have you ever considered that your faster-than-light travel might work better if you stopped trying to break the light speed barrier and instead simply adjusted your relationship with causality? As their ship was guided toward the Ceres station by fields of energy the Authority's sensors could barely detect, Sorix realized that this wasn't going to be a mission of cataloging a primitive species. Instead, it seemed humanity was about to teach the teachers. The docking clamps engaged with a gentle touch, and through the viewport, Sorix could see humans walking on the station's external surface without suits, protected by nothing visible to the Authority sensors. One of them waved cheerfully at the council ship. "Welcome to Sol," Director Okafor said warmly. "Now shall we begin the real exchange of knowledge?" Looking at Mila's stunned expression, Sorix could only nod. They had come to observe, but it seemed they were about to become students instead. In the days that followed, the Authority delegation struggled to maintain their professional composure as they toured Earth and its colonies. Nothing made sense according to their understanding of how civilizations develop. Chief Cultural Anthropologist Zena of the Authority fought to maintain her scientific detachment as she studied the data streaming across her neural interface. After 2 weeks on Earth, her understanding of societal development was in shambles. "But where is your Central Planning Committee?" Zena asked Dr. Marcus Chen, their assigned liaison at the Global Innovation Hub in Singapore. "How do you coordinate technological development across your species without unified direction?" Dr. Chen laughed, adjusting his gravity-defying mobility chair that seemed to float on a cushion of warped spacetime. "That's the beauty of it. We don't. Everyone just creates, and we share information freely. People build on each other's ideas." Zena's auxiliary brain struggled to process this concept. But the chaos, the inefficiency. "Watch this," Chen said, gesturing to a massive holographic display. "Hey, global network. I'm wondering if anyone's thought about applying quantum tunneling principles to cellular regeneration." Within seconds, the display lit up with hundreds of responses from around the world. Scientists, hobbyists, inventors, even teenagers with interesting theories, all contributing ideas, building on each other's suggestions, pointing out problems, and offering solutions. "You see," Chen smiled. "Chaos. Yes, but creative chaos. Organized chaos." Before Zena could respond, a young human, barely an adolescent, rushed up to them, practically bouncing with excitement. "Dr. Chen, I was thinking about your quantum tunneling question. What if we combined it with my mom's temporal manipulation research? We could potentially regenerate tissue by borrowing its past state." Chen's eyes lit up. "Aisha, that's brilliant. Want to set up a test in the community lab?" "Community lab?" Zena interjected. "You allow untrained civilians to access advanced research facilities." "Of course," Chen replied. "Some of our biggest breakthroughs came from people just tinkering around, like our gravity manipulation technology that was invented by a poet who was trying to create a new form of performance art." Zena's color patterns flickered in distress. "But the regulations, the safety protocols." "Oh, we have safety systems," Aisha chimed in. "They're quantum AIs that predict potential accidents before they happen and prevent them by slightly adjusting local probability fields. I helped program one last summer for my school project." Zena made a note to schedule another session with her psychological support unit. Every conversation with humans seemed to require one afterward. She watched as Chen and Aisha excitedly discussed their impromptu experiment, pulling in other researchers virtually from around the system. "What about your planetary defense?" Zena asked, trying to find some aspect of human civilization that followed logical patterns. "Surely that must be centrally controlled." "Not really," Chen said, still working on the holographic models floating around him. "It's more of a collaborative network. Anyone can propose improvements to the system, and the best ideas get implemented automatically. Last month, a group of gaming enthusiasts completely redesigned our orbital defense grid because they thought it would be more fun if it looked like something from their favorite video game. Turned out their design was 30% more efficient. A notification flashed across the hub's main display. Someone in Nairobi had successfully tested a prototype based on Aisha's idea, while a team in Rio had already begun running simulations on potential medical applications. All this had happened in the span of their brief conversation. "But how do you prevent chaos?" Zena asked weakly. "How do you maintain order?" Chen's expression softened. "Maybe chaos isn't something to prevent. Maybe it's something to embrace and direct. Look around you. Every human you see has different ideas, different approaches, different ways of thinking. We don't try to force everyone into the same path. Instead, we created systems that let all those different approaches work together." As if to emphasize his point, the hub's quantum probability field suddenly shifted, and a group of children on a school tour materialized in the atrium. They had apparently teleported in from the Luna colony for their Earth history lesson. "Dr. Chen," one of them called out, "we figured out how to make the teleporters work with zero energy cost. Want to see?" Chen grinned at Zena. "Want to watch a bunch of 12-year-olds revolutionize transportation theory?" Zena looked at her schedule for the day. She was supposed to be conducting a formal anthropological survey of human social structures. Instead, she found herself nodding. Yes, I would." As she watched the children excitedly set up their demonstration, Zena realized something profound. The Galactic Authority had always seen technological and social development as a ladder to be climbed one rung at a time. Humans, it seemed, had looked at the ladder and decided to build an anti-gravity elevator instead. "Your species," Zena said slowly, "is simultaneously the most primitive and most advanced civilization I have ever encountered." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Oh, how so?" "You still have nations. You still have conflicts. You haven't achieved the unified planetary consciousness that most species develop before advancing technologically. And yet," Zena gestured at the hub around them, where impossible technologies were being casually invented by children. "And yet you've surpassed us in ways we never imagined possible." "Maybe that's exactly why we advanced the way we did," Chen suggested. "We never tried to all think the same way. We just figured out how to think differently together." As the children began their demonstration, casually manipulating the fabric of space-time while explaining their theory with crayon drawings, Zena began composing her report to the Authority in her head. How does one explain a civilization that had turned chaos into its greatest strength? The cosmic threat. 6 months after first contact, emergency alarms blared throughout the Galactic Authority's central hub as reports flooded in from across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The void, as they were calling it, had appeared without warning, a growing region of space where the fundamental constants of physics simply change. Ships entering the affected zones either disappeared or emerged as twisted masses of altered matter. Entire solar systems were being engulfed. Grand Observer Xorix, recently promoted to Crisis Response Director after his groundbreaking first contact with Earth, stood before the emergency session of the Authority Council. "The anomaly continues to expand," Xorix reported, his voice grave. "Our best scientists estimate we have perhaps 3 standard months before it threatens major population centers." "What do our models suggest?" asked Representative Talora of the Aldebaran Confederation, her crystalline form vibrating with concern. Xorix hesitated. The models suggest this shouldn't be possible at all." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Thousands of years of unified galactic science, and they were facing something that defied their fundamental understanding of reality. That's when Xorix's quantum communicator chimed, a direct call from Earth. "Put them through to the main chamber," Xorix ordered. The holographic form of Dr. Sophia Rice, Earth's newly appointed Crisis Response Director, materialized in the center of the council chamber. "We've been monitoring the situation," Rice said without preamble. "We'd like to help." "With all due respect, Director Rice," Representative Talora interjected, "this crisis involves fundamental forces beyond your comprehension. Rise finished with a slight smile. Actually, we think we know what's happening. We've seen something similar, though on a much smaller scale, during some of our early quantum consciousness experiments. The chamber fell silent. Thorix leaned forward. Explain. We believe the void is a manifestation of conscious observation affecting quantum states on a macro scale, Rice said, gesturing as complex equations appeared around her. Essentially, someone or something is thinking wrong about how reality should work, and reality is adjusting to match. That's impossible, another council member declared. Quantum effects don't scale to macro levels. They do if you have enough entangled particles working in concert, Rise interrupted. We discovered this by accident when we were developing our quantum computing networks. Had a few interesting incidents before we figured out proper containment. She waved her hand, and a new set of holograms appeared. Detailed technical schematics that made several Authority scientists' eyes widen in recognition. We've developed a prototype system we call the Reality Anchor, Rice continued. It uses a network of quantum-entangled human consciousness to reinforce local physics. Think of it as reminding space how it's supposed to behave. Human consciousness? Exorix asked. Why specifically human? Because we're messy, Rice said with a grin. Most spacefaring species develop a very structured, logical way of thinking. It's why your technology progresses in predictable patterns. But humans, we never lost our ability to think illogically, to imagine impossible things. Turns out, that's exactly what you need when reality itself starts getting creative. You want to fight an impossible phenomenon with impossible thinking. Hexorix said slowly, beginning to understand. You want to use human unpredictability as a weapon against cosmic uncertainty. Exactly. We've already begun constructing a network of reality anchors throughout Earth space. We can expand it to cover the affected regions, but we'll need help with deployment and... Rise paused. We'll need volunteers from other species to help operate them. The more diverse the consciousness network, the stronger the effect. You want us to link our minds with humans? Representative Talora asked, her crystalline form flickering with uncertainty. Think of it more like a conversation, Rice said. A conversation with reality itself, reminding it of the rules we all agreed on. We humans will provide the creativity to adapt to the void's changes, while your logical minds will help maintain stability. Exorix looked around the chamber, seeing the mixture of fear and hope on the faces of the assembled representatives. How quickly can you begin? We already have ships ready to launch, Rise replied. We just need your permission and your trust. What followed was the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. Human vessels, ships that seemed to ignore conventional physics, spread throughout the affected sectors. Teams of human quantum engineers worked alongside alien scientists, installing reality anchors and training mixed-species crews to operate them. The void fought back. It twisted and warped, finding new ways to break physics. But for every change it made, human operators adapted, thinking in ways that shouldn't work but somehow did. And when human creativity threatened to spiral out of control, their alien partners provided the stability needed to make their impossible solutions viable. Dr. Amara O.C., leading the deployment of the reality anchor at the edge of the Antares sector, found herself working alongside Kavith, a crystalline entity from the Aldebaranian Confederation. The void is shifting again, Kavith reported, their crystalline form vibrating in distress as they monitored the sensor readings. It's changing the strong nuclear force constant. Amara closed her eyes, connecting to the reality anchor's consciousness interface. I can feel it. It's like the space ahead is forgetting how to hold atoms together. Our conventional approach would be to recalibrate the anchor to the standard constants, Kavith said, but that hasn't been working consistently. Then let's try something unconventional, Amara suggested. Instead of telling reality what it should be, let's ask it what it wants to be. Kavith's crystals flashed in confusion. That's illogical. Reality doesn't want anything. Maybe not. Amara smiled, But what if we approach this like a conversation instead of a correction? The void is changing the rules. What if we acknowledge the change but suggest a compromise? Across the network, human operators began implementing Amara's approach. Instead of fighting the void's changes directly, they began working with them, guiding them into patterns that, while different from normal physics, remained stable and predictable. 1 month after deployment, the void began to recede. 2 weeks later, it had shrunk to a manageable size. By the end of the 3rd month, it had been reduced to a small, contained anomaly that actually proved useful for advanced physics research. In the Authority chamber, Thorix stood again before the assembled representatives, but this time Sophia Rice stood beside him in person. "The crisis is over," Thorix announced, "and we have learned something profound. The very chaos and unpredictability that we once thought made humanity dangerous has proven to be their greatest gift to the galaxy." Rice stepped forward. "We don't think like you do. We don't build like you do. We don't solve problems like you do. And that's exactly why the galaxy needs us all. The void taught us that reality itself isn't as rigid as we thought, and neither should our thinking be." Representative Talora rose, her crystalline form glowing with newfound respect. "For millennia, the Galactic Authority has guided species toward a unified path of development. We believe there was one way forward, one correct progression of technology and society. Humanity has shown us otherwise. The universe is vast," Thorix concluded, "and we now understand it contains more possibilities than any single approach could ever comprehend. Together, with humanity's chaotic creativity balanced by our ordered logic, there is no challenge we cannot overcome." As the council chamber erupted in approval, Rice leaned over to Thorix. "So, want to hear about our latest project? We're working on something we call conscious reality shaping, basically teaching reality new tricks." Thorix's outer membrane rippled in what Rice now recognized as laughter. "I've learned not to ask if something is possible when humans are involved. I only ask, when can we start?" Outside the Authority hub, the stars shimmered a bit more brightly, as if the universe itself was eager to see what this new partnership would bring.